there's a lot of them that are inspiring. I mean, there's unlike many of the comic books, it's such a vast universe for this character and his contemporaries. And you know, I read a few different ones. I mean, for the most part, this is an origin story, so I was able to focus on a little bit on Secret Origins, but then obviously our script is a much more in-depth interpretation of that sort of basic storyline. But you know, that Jeff Johns described this thing as a version of Star Wars in space, and a version of Star Wars in the DC universe. And I think that was a pretty apt description. I mean, it's just because you have so much you can mine out of these comics and out of this character in particular. And you know, I think anytime you're dealing with a guy who has something unbelievable and insurmountable to overcome, it makes for a pretty interesting story. And as an actor, it's an interesting and excellent thing for me to get an opportunity to play. So. You know, this guy has a very distinct starting point, which is a place of, you know, he's a bit of a fractured human being. He's seen some sort of difficult stuff in his life. He's watched his father die, and then we move on to find him a little bit later in life, and he's kind of arrogant, cocky, and aimless. And it's this extraordinary power that's bestowed upon him that, in fact, sort of sets him upon a bit of a humbler path. And it's pretty cool. It's a motion capture suit that I'm wearing. So because it's actually not seen on camera, they've managed to find a material that I think most would agree is the most aggravating substance on Earth. The thing we're shooting in Louisiana, which is, you know, pretty close to the sun in terms of the hottest place you can find anywhere around. So the suit, I think, is actually, you know, it's been a little bit difficult running around in a unitard in the New Orleans high summer heat. So I think, but it really, if I were wearing anything, I mean, you know, it's going to be pretty uncomfortable doing an action movie at this time of year in the Deep South. So I can't be too hard on the suit. The training is just different. I mean, you know, you're not training on an aesthetic level. You're training for more of a functional ability. So you want to be able to stay out of the hospital for as long as you possibly can during the shoot. But it is a Martin Campbell movie, so you're bound to be there once or twice. He pushes you pretty hard, and because of that, I think that's why the action in the film is so visceral and so real, and you know, you really feel what Martin once described it as a knife fight in a phone booth, and I think that's a really apt description of how his action feels, and it's rough, it's dirty, it's fast, and you know, and you got to be ready for it. So it's been fun to train in that regard for something actually real.
He's inducted, he becomes Green Lantern. The way in which the ring works through willpower, the stronger your willpower, the stronger your construct, the construct be whatever your imagination cares to create. I think the actual story itself is very simple. I know there's many complex characters, and there are many other characters, and all the characters from the origin story go on to the dark side in later comics and things. But no, I think it's very straightforward.
I had to spend many days with Ryan. That was my training. No, I got to be in the Matrix rig, which was really cool. It was this rig that was invented for the Matrix, and I think it goes about 20 feet high, but I like to say 50. So please spread that rumor because it makes me feel cooler. But you know, I'm on this like gyroscopic waist belt, and it works towards your weight, and it makes you very nauseous, and you can just spin in every which direction. But that was about the extent of my stunts for this. But we also did some test pilot training too, which was really fun. You know, Nyla was very specific to make her relevant but not too modern. You know, you didn't want to connect the movie to any specific time because you don't want to date it. So it's just very classic column dresses with just like an iconic, strong businesswoman look.
He's a biologist. He studies. He teaches at the university, but he's, you know, in his private time is quite interested in extremophiles, you know, animals that live in extreme environments on Earth as a way to understand creatures that live on another planet. And, you know, there's a fine line there between science and wishful thinking. And I thought about a lot of people who sort of stretched our ideas, you know, can add a little bit of creativity to science, say like, you know, Carl Sagan or Isaac Asimov and people like that. And the part of me that when I was young, I read more things like that, I would say, than I did straight comics. And, a sense of wonder about the world where you start filling in gaps, which is what most scientists try not to do, So I really thought of him as kind of a dreamer in a lot of ways.
I'm not sure you prepare for villains necessarily. You prepare for a character, and I suppose the way I look at villains is that nobody's born evil. There's usually something that happens in their time on the planet or wherever or in space that causes them to become the way they are. So with Sinestro, basically, you have to look at who he is and what he stands for and what he believes in, essentially. And he is an incredibly organized, fearless exponent of the Green Lantern Corps who believes that he knows best. And in this movie, and as it stands, he becomes mentor to the newly minted human Green Lantern and basically guides him through his first steps. And we deal with really that process. So I don't think of him as a villain or even in a bad sense. He's just an incredibly powerful presence who knows what he believes and what he wants to be right. And if there's anything that causes him later on to spill over to the dark side, it's probably his unquestioning belief in his own rightness. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, going to work beating up a 12-year-old girl wasn't an experience that I very often. So it's nice to be facing, a worthy opponent.
Take that as a compliment.
Yeah, we've been since I've been here. We've been training. Part of the storyline is that Hal needs to visit Oa and meet the other Green Lanterns, and basically Sinestro tests him because he's not entirely sure that a human is worthy of being in the Corps. So there are a sequence where Kilowog and Sinestro and Tom Array put him through his paces.
I don't personally delineate too much between Marvel and DC and kind of pay any heed to that supposed rivalry or we live in a world in which the technology I think has allowed us to bring a lot of these kinds of movies to life in ways that they couldn't even 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and so I think that the emergence of the superhero franchise being sort of more mainstream now I think is a result of that and nothing really more. But I don't I've never really had that thought or issue about I was in a Marvel film, so I can't be in a DC film. And the casting process for me was the same as it would have been for anyone else. I met with Martin. I fell in love with the concept, the idea. He showed me the art department, which was it was an experience. I didn't go to the art department and see a few things. I had an experience there. I mean, to see the world that they were creating for this character and for this film was unlike anything I'd ever seen captured on film ever. And that was an amazing moment for me. So that's what really made me want to do it. And then I screen tested, not once, but twice. I got up there and Martin put me through the paces. But the great thing about a screen test is it's just another day at work. You're there on set, there's another actor with you, and there's a set, and there's a cameraman, and you just go to work. And so it was actually kind of a nice, pleasant experience.
Well, we did go through, we did test a few actors, and it was, we tested a few of them twice, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
I think we did. We went to England and tested a couple of people, right? But really, and it's a very serious consideration because it's not just one film. If it is successful, then I'm sure they'll want to do a sequel. So this is something that goes on for a long period of time, and that's what tests are all about: is looking at them and saying, well, who comes up best? Everyone was good. Ryan was exceptional, and the agreement was with everybody, Warner Brothers and Donald, myself, and everybody, that Ryan was perfect for the part. So the process is pretty standard in terms of films like this, with so much riding on it, and a potential franchise. And so, that's how we arrived at that.
One other little funny anecdote is that Martin and I had never done a superhero movie, but we found out that they always want to see the guy in the mask. That's part of the test.
Yeah.
And Ryan looks really good in a mask.
I have I actually have one little anecdote to add to this that I haven't mentioned yet, but there was a Cinderella element to it because the effects house that was building the mask, they have these things we have in our industry called life casts, and you do that on your head, and it's a mold of an actor's head, and then you can build a prosthetic around that. you could do anything. I mean, obviously Peter had one done to wear his prosthetics in the film, but the effects house that was asked to make the Green Lantern mask had no idea who was auditioning, but they arbitrarily chose my head from their vast catalog of actors' heads with which to build this mask around. So when I showed up to set, my mask fit a little bit better than maybe Regis Philbin's or Richard Chamberlain's or whoever else was auditioning that day.